Hello, Honors 10, and welcome to your first flipped video of our phrases unit. Before we can move on into the phrases, we have to first review the basic parts of sentences in order to understand how certain phrases will function within sentences. Our goal for today is to identify objects and subject complements within sentences. You should be taking notes as you watch the video. Please pause on certain screens so that you can take notes. All right, within parts of sentences, there are two categories. The first category is that of objects, and there are two types of objects, direct and indirect objects. Those objects appear with action verbs. The other category of parts of sentences are subject complements. There are two types, predicate adjectives and predicate nominatives. Subject complements appear with linking verbs. Please copy this chart. Now, within parts of sentences and our objects, we have direct objects. A direct object is a noun or a pronoun that follows an action verb. The formula that you should write down to find a direct object is to locate the subject, then the action verb, and ask who or what. The answer to those questions will lead you to the direct object of the sentence. Something to note is that not all sentences with action verbs contain direct objects, but if a sentence does contain a direct object, it could also contain an indirect object, so you must check for indirect objects. An indirect object is a noun or a pronoun that always falls between the action verb and the direct object in a sentence and tells either to or for whom or what an action is done. The formula to find an indirect object that you should write down is to find the subject, find the action verb, ask who or what to locate the direct object, and then ask to or for whom or what. The answer to those questions will lead you to the indirect object. Not all sentences with action verbs will contain indirect objects, but you should always check. A sentence cannot contain an indirect object without having a direct object within the sentence. Our subject complements, as we said before, there are two. A predicate adjective is an adjective that follows a linking verb and describes the subject of the sentence, which is why it's a subject complement. A predicate nominative is similar. It's a noun or pronoun that follows a linking verb and renames or identifies the subject of the sentence. Note that both complements appear with linking verbs. Now, within our subject complements, we said that there are predicate adjectives and nominatives. We need to review the linking verbs that are going to indicate that there are subject complements in a sentence. The most obvious list is probably the forms of be that you are all familiar with. Those verbs include is, am, are, was, were, be, been, and being. But the other category of tricky linking verbs are verbs that express condition. These verbs look like action verbs, but can also function as linking verbs. And the list includes look, smell, feel, sound, taste, grow, appear, become, seem, and remain. Now, those verbs that express condition, there's a tip that you can use to figure out if a verb is functioning as an action verb or a linking verb in a sentence. The tip is that if you can replace a verb with a linking verb without changing the meaning of the sentence, that verb is a linking verb. For example, I have two sentences here. The first sentence says, I tasted the popcorn. In the sentence, I is the subject, tasted is the verb. Now the question is, am I doing the tasting? Is that an action being performed? It is. So this is an action verb in the sentence. And because there's an action verb, you can locate the object. I tasted what? Popcorn is the direct object. In the second sentence, we have the subject, popcorn. Our verb is tasted. Now the question is, can popcorn taste anything? It can't, which would say then that that's not an action verb. The tip is, if you can replace tasted with a linking verb, it's actually a linking verb. You could say the popcorn was salty. That doesn't change the meaning of the sentence, which means this is a linking verb then. Let's take a look at some example sentences and see if we can locate the objects and complements within those sentences. First, number one, let's find the subject, mechanic. Our verb is fixed. Fixed is an action verb. So let's find the direct object. The mechanic fixed what? Car. is the direct object in the sentence. If we have a direct object, we should always check to see if there's an indirect object. The only word that falls between the verb and the direct object is the, which is an adjective describing car, so it is not an indirect object. In number 2, judges is the subject, presented is the verb. Presented is an action verb. Let's find the direct object. The judges presented what? Trophy is the direct object in this sentence. Now there is a noun that falls between the action verb and the direct object, so we should see if there's an indirect object. The judges presented a trophy to whom? Winners is your indirect object. For number 3, the subject is I. It is not of a hurricane or hurricane because that is a prepositional phrase, and prepositional phrases cannot contain subjects. So I is the subject. Our verb is the word is, which is a linking verb. We need to look for a word in the predicate that either renames or describes the subject. Area is a noun. It is a predicate nominative. Area renames the I. Now, in this sentence, a and calm are adjectives, yes, but they're not describing I. They're describing area. So we need to ignore those adjectives. They're not functioning as predicate adjectives. We cross off any adjectives that are describing a noun in the predicate. For number 4, our subject is baby. Our verb is, which is a linking verb. And then we're looking for predicate adjectives or predicate nominatives. Chubby, cute are both adjectives that describe the baby, the subject. So these are predicate adjectives. For number 5, the snow was heavy. Snow is our subject. Was is our linking verb. Heavy is an adjective that describes the subject, snow, so it's a predicate adjective. Number 6, chef is our subject. Tasted is our verb. In this sentence, the chef is doing the tasting, so this is an action verb. We need to check for a direct object. The chef tasted what? Stew is the direct object. There is no word that can function as an indirect object. There's no noun or pronoun between tasted and stew. Number 7, stew is our subject. Tasted is our verb. The stew is not physically tasting anything, so this one's not an action verb, but you can say the stew was spicy, which means this is a linking verb. If we have a linking verb, we need to check for complements. Spicy is an adjective, so we label that a predicate adjective.